Valen floated in the soft blue light of the data stream. The Galactic Archive was quiet. It was always quiet. Valen was a researcher for the K3 Collective. His job was to find connections in the information, to find stories in the numbers. He had been reviewing the master list of lethal species for 1,000 cycles. He knew it well. There were 15,000 entries. Each one was a life form that had caused the death of a thinking being. It was a serious list, a dark list. Today, a small note flashed in the corner of his vision. It was a cross-reference alert. The system had found a link between the lethal species list and the cultural files of a species called humans from a planet called Earth. Valen thought it was a mistake. Perhaps humans had been killed by many of these species. That would make sense. Earth was a dangerous garden world. He opened the link. His frills, the soft folds of skin around his face that showed his feelings, flushed a pale blue. This was the color of confusion. The note did not say humans were victims. It said something else entirely. The note was under Historical Domestication Index. The number next to it was 30,000. Valen sat very still. The number 30,000 floated in the air. The lethal species list had 15,000 entries. This human index was double that number. His mind tried to understand. Did this mean humans had tamed every lethal species? Twice over? That was not possible. No civilization did that. Taming was for safe, useful creatures, not for killers. He spoke a command. Explain. Human Domestication Index. Clarify. The archive's voice was calm. The Domestication Index for Homo sapiens counts non-human species that have been kept by humans within their personal dwelling places, in a role designated as companion animal or pet, for a significant period of their shared history. The count is approximate. Show me an example, Valen said. One entry from the lethal list that is also on the human index. A new window opened. Valen saw an image. It was a small creature. It had fur. It had pointed ears and large eyes. It looked harmless. It looked soft. The label under it read, GDR 8472 Delta 441. Common designation, domestic cat. Scientific name, Felis catus. Valen knew this one. He pulled its file from the lethal species database. The information was stark. Felis catus, a small, agile, solitary carnivore. Excellent night vision. Retractable claws for gripping and slashing. Teeth designed for piercing vertebrae. Hunting method often involves a prolonged play phase with prey, increasing stress and metabolic capture success. Estimated responsible for the extinction of 63 songbird species on Earth alone. A highly efficient killer of small vertebrates. And yet, the human file showed something else. It showed the same creature sleeping on soft furniture. It showed humans hand-feeding it. It showed the creature rubbing against human legs. The humans were smiling. Valen felt a deep curiosity. This was not a mistake. This was a contradiction. Paradox. How could one species look at a known killer and see a friend, a roommate? He needed to understand. He needed to see not just data but a story. The archive could show him stories. It could lock onto a specific instance in time and space and let him observe. Find me a case, Valen instructed. A current human, living with Felis catus. A normal life, no special events, just the everyday. The archive hummed. Stars and planet maps swirled. It settled on a world, a continent, a coastal city called Busan. It focused on a single apartment building. Found a human male, living alone. His name was Minsu. Valen watched. Minsu was in his late 20s. He worked on a bright screen designing pictures. His apartment was neat, but lived in. And there, walking across the back of his chair, was the creature. The lethal species Delta 441. Minsu called it Mongsim. He reached back and scratched its head. The creature made a low, rumbling sound. A purr, the database supplied. Valen observed for a full cycle. He saw Mongsim sleep for hours in a square of sunlight. He saw her chase a rolling ball. He saw her stare out the window at birds. He saw Minsu talk to her. "Are you hungry, silly girl?" he would ask. He filled a bowl with dry food. The creature ate lazily. There was no sign of the killer from the database.
No stialte, no cruelte, no eficiens lauger.
Just a small, sleepy animal in a warm home. Valen was a good researcher. He knew appearances could deceive. The data on lethality was clear. The claws were there, retracted. The teeth were there, hidden. The instinct was in its genes. The potential was real. So where did it go? Was it erased by generations of living with humans? Or was it simply waiting? He decided to focus his study here. On Min-Su and Mong-Sim, he would watch and learn. He needed to solve this puzzle. The galaxy said one thing: these humans, and their 30,000 deadly friends, seemed to live in a different truth. Valen had to find out which truth was real. He settled in to observe, his blue frills slowly fading to a neutral, attentive gray. The quiet story in the small apartment was now the most important data stream in the galaxy. Min-Su's alarm buzzed at 7 in the morning. He reached over and turned it off. A moment later, he felt a weight land softly on his chest. He didn't need to open his eyes. It was Mong-Sim. Her small paws kneaded gently at the blanket over his chest. A slow, push-pull motion. She purred, the sound a steady, quiet motor. "Okay, okay," Min-Su said, his voice rough with sleep. He opened his eyes. Mong-Sim's face was inches from his. Her green eyes were wide and calm. She blinked slowly at him. He blinked slowly back. This was their morning ritual. In the archive, Valen watched. He noted the behavior. The database called this kneading action milk treading, a remnant behavior from nursing as a kitten. It was a sign of comfort. Valen's own people showed comfort by a gentle hum. The principle was similar, but the context was strange. Here was a lethal creature displaying infant-like behavior toward a fully grown human. Min-Su got up. He shuffled to the small kitchen. Mong-Sim wove between his feet, her tail held high. She meowed once, a clear, sharp sound. I know, Min-Su said. He took a can from the cupboard, opened it, and spooned wet food into a small dish. He placed it on the floor. Mong-Sim approached. She did not simply eat. She first sniffed the food carefully. Then she looked up at Min-Su and meowed again, as if saying thank you, or perhaps checking if it was really for her. Only then did she begin to eat, taking small, delicate bites. Valen checked the nutritional data of the food. It was a balanced mix of proteins and fats, formulated for an obligate carnivore. The human was providing exactly what the creature's biology required. This was not random kindness. This was targeted care. The day unfolded quietly. Min-Su worked at his computer. Mong-Sim found her spot in a square of sunlight on the floor. She spent 2 hours there, sleeping, only occasionally twitching an ear. Valen found his attention drifting. Where was the predator? Where was the fierce hunter from the database? He decided to review the broader file on Felis Catus. He saw videos from Earth. He saw cats in wilder settings. He saw one stalking through tall grass, its body low to the ground. Its eyes were fixed on a bird. It moved with a silence that was unnerving. It sprang. The capture was quick. It was indeed a killer. Then he saw another clip. A human child was pulling a string. A kitten was chasing it, pouncing, batting it with its paws. The child was laughing. The database linked the two behaviors. The kitten was practicing. The motions for catching the string and catching the bird were the same. The play was training for lethality. Valen looked back at Mong-Sim. She had a small stuffed mouse toy. She was batting it across the wooden floor, then chasing it, catching it with her front paws. Her claws were out, but they snagged softly on the fabric. She was playing the same game. She was practicing. Min-Su watched her from his desk and smiled. He did not look worried. He looked entertained. He found her deadly practice cute. Later, Mong-Sim jumped onto the windowsill. She stared outside, utterly still. Her tail tip flicked just once. On the other side of the glass, a small sparrow had landed on a railing. Mong-Sim's entire body was focused. Valen recognized the posture from the hunting video. This was the real thing. The prey was right there. Minsu noticed. He got up from his chair. He walked over to the window. He stood next to Mongsim, looking out at the bird. He put a hand gently on her back. "Just looking, Mungsima," he said softly. "Just looking is enough." The cat's tense posture softened. Just a little. She leaned slightly into his hand. The moment passed. The bird flew away. Mongsim turned and jumped down, going to drink from her water bowl. The hunt was over before it began. Valen was puzzled. The human had intervened, not with force, but with a touch and a quiet word. And the predator had stopped. It had chosen the touch over the hunt. Why? The answer was not in the cat's file. It was in the humans. Valen pulled Minsu's basic history. He saw a simple life. He saw that Minsu lived alone. He saw that he worked alone. His contact with other humans was limited to friends on screens and brief meetings. Valen began to see a shape. Mongsim was not just an animal in Minsu's house. She was a presence. She was a living thing that greeted him. She demanded food and gave affection in return. She filled the silent spaces. Her playful practicing brought a smile to his face. Her quiet purring filled the room with a soft sound. Maybe, Valen thought, the relationship was not about removing the lethal nature. Maybe it was about surrounding it with something else. The human provided food, safety, and comfort. In return, the cat provided focus, a small drama, a living connection. Her wildness was still there, seen in her playful pounces and her windowside stares. But it was framed within the walls of the apartment. It was a wildness the human could observe and even enjoy, but from a safe distance. It was a partnership. A very strange one. A partnership between a soft, tool-using ape and a tiny, patient tiger. Valen's frills warmed to a thoughtful pink. He needed to see more. He needed to see what happened when the outside world, the real world, pressed in on this little arrangement. For now, the sunbeam had moved. Mongsim found a new spot on the sofa. Minsu continued to work. The peace in the apartment was deep, and it was real. But Valen now knew it was a peace that contained sharp claws. He wondered how long it could last. The peace lasted for several days. Valen watched the quiet rhythms of the apartment. He saw Minsu work, sleep, eat, and watch videos on his screen. He saw Mongsim follow her own routine of sleep, eat, play, and stare out the window. It was a calm bubble. Valen started to wonder if his theory was wrong. Maybe in this setting, the lethal instincts were truly asleep. Maybe domestication was a kind of gentle erasure. Then, one evening, the bubble was punctured. The sound was a sharp, frantic knocking on Minsu's door. Valen observed Minsu look up, surprised. He wasn't expecting anyone. He paused his work and went to the door, opening it cautiously. His neighbor, a young woman named June, stood in the hallway. She looked pale. Her eyes were wide. She was holding her hands tightly together. "Minsu SSI," she said, her voice tense. "I am so sorry to bother you. There's something in my apartment." Minsu stepped back, inviting her in. "What is it? Are you okay?" June came in but stayed near the door, as if ready to flee. "A rat. A very big one. It ran from under my fridge into the living room. I saw it. I was on the sofa." She shuddered. "I can't go back in there. I called the building manager, but he cannot come until tomorrow morning." Minsu nodded, his face serious. He understood. June lived alone too. A problem like this could feel huge and frightening. "Do you have traps?" Minsu asked. "No, I don't have anything. I don't know what to do," June said, her voice shaking a little. Valen watched, curious. This was a common problem for many species. An invasive pest. The human solutions would be interesting. Perhaps a tool? A chemical spray? A clever trap he could record for the archive. Minsu did not move toward a cupboard or a toolbox. Instead, he looked down at the floor. Mongsim was there. She had come to see the visitor. She sat neatly, her tail wrapped around her feet, watching June with calm interest. Minsu looked from the cat to his neighbor. A quiet understanding passed over his face. Mong Sim will handle it, he said simply. June blinked. Your cat? Yes, Minsu said. He said it with a calm confidence that surprised Valen. It was not boastful. It was a statement of fact, like saying a knife is sharp or water is wet. June looked unsure. She glanced at the small, fluffy creature on the floor. Mong Sim meowed politely, a tiny sound. Are you sure? June asked. It's what she's for, Minsu said with a small smile. He walked to his door and opened it wider. He looked at Mong Sim. He didn't give a loud command. He just nodded his head toward the hallway. Go on, Mungsima. Check it out. Mungsim's ears perked up. She stood. Her demeanor changed instantly. The sleepy calm was gone. Her body became low and fluid. She moved out the door and into the hallway not like a pet, but like a scout. She stopped at June's open door, which was just across the hall. She sniffed the air at the threshold. Her tail gave one slow, deliberate switch. Valen felt his frills tighten. This was different. This was the creature from the database. Minsu and June watched from the hallway. Minsu put a finger to his lips, signaling for quiet. Mong Sim slipped into June's apartment. She disappeared into the dimness inside. For a moment, there was nothing. Valen listened through the apartment sensors. He heard the faint hum of a refrigerator. He heard the distant sound of traffic. Then, a new sound, a fast, scrabbling noise from inside June's living room. It was the sound of claws on hard floor. It was followed by a moment of absolute silence. Then, a thump, a single solid thump. Then, silence again. Minsu and June waited. They didn't speak. A minute passed. Then Mong Sim appeared in the doorway. She walked back into the hallway with the same quiet fluidity. In her mouth was a large gray rat. It was limp. She carried it without effort. She walked past June, who took a step back, her hand over her mouth. Mong Sim went straight into Minsu's apartment. She walked to the middle of the floor and set the rat down carefully. Then she sat beside it, looked up at Minsu, and let out a soft, chirping meow. The job was done. It had taken less than 10 minutes. Minsu walked over. He looked at the rat, then at Mong Sim. Good girl, he said, his voice warm and full of pride. Very good girl. He reached down and scratched her firmly behind the ears. Mong Sim leaned into the touch, her purr starting up again, loud and rumbling. The lethal focus was gone. She was just a cat again, pleased with her work and her praise. Minsu got a plastic bag and disposed of the rat. He washed his hands. June stood in his doorway, looking amazed and relieved. Thank you, she said, her voice much softer now. Thank you so much. To both of you. It's no problem, Minsu said. That's her job. She's a hunter. June went back to her apartment, closing the door behind her. Minsu gave Mong Sim a special treat from a jar. Valen watched, his thoughts racing. The evidence was now clear. The lethality was not erased. It was not asleep. It was on call. It had been directed. The human had seen a problem and had deployed a perfectly designed, self-motivated solution. The cat had understood the task and executed it with terrifying efficiency. And afterward, both had returned to their peaceful routine as if nothing had happened. The partnership was real. The human provided the home, the food, the affection. The lethal species provided a specific, deadly skill set when needed. It was a contract written in instinct and understanding, not in words. Valen finally saw the truth. Humans did not keep pets despite their lethality. In some cases, they kept them precisely because of it. The incident with the rat changed Valen's view completely. He had seen the potential become real. But it raised a bigger question. Why would Minsu, a gentle and quiet man, want such potential living in his home? Was it just for pest control? That seemed too simple, too transactional. There had to be more to the bond. Valen decided to look deeper, not at the cat's instincts, but at the human's history. He instructed the archive to show him key moments from Minsu's past that involved Mong Sim. The archive complied, showing him memories stored in digital photo albums and communication logs. The first scene was from 3 years earlier. A younger Minsu sat on the floor of this same apartment, but it looked emptier. His eyes were red. His face was still. He had just ended a video call. The call had been with his family. His grandfather had died that morning. The funeral was happening far away, and Minsu could not get there in time. He felt a deep, hollow loneliness. Valen watched this Minsu. He did not cry out. He just sat, staring at the wall, lost in a silent ocean of grief. Then, a small movement. A tiny Mong Sim, just a kitten with oversized paws and ears, wobbled over to him. She climbed onto his lap. She didn't meow for food. She didn't demand play. She simply curled into a tight, warm ball against his stomach. She began to purr. The vibration was strong for such a small creature. It was a steady, physical hum against his body. Minsu looked down. Slowly, he put a hand on her tiny back. He felt the purr. He stayed like that for a long time. He was not okay, but he was not completely alone. The small, living engine of warmth on his lap was an anchor. It gave him something outside of his own sadness to focus on. It was a simple, wordless comfort. The second scene was from a year later. Minsu was sleeping. The room was dark. He was caught in a bad dream, his breathing fast and shallow. He moaned in his sleep. On the bed. The now-grown Mong Sim was asleep near his feet. Her ears twitched. She woke up. She sat up, her eyes catching the faint light from the window. She watched Minsu struggle in his sleep. She did not lick his face or nudge him with her nose, as a dog might. Her approach was different. She walked calmly along the side of the bed to the nightstand. On it was a glass of water. Mong Sim put her face near the glass, sniffed it, and then deliberately, with a soft tap of her paw, pushed it off the edge. The glass hit the wooden floor with a loud crash and shattered. Water sprayed everywhere. Minsu jerked awake with a gasp. The bad dream was broken. He sat up, his heart pounding, confused by the noise. He turned on the light and saw the broken glass and the water. He saw Mong Sim sitting on the nightstand, looking at the mess, then back at him. "Mong Sim," he said, his voice thick with sleep and surprise. He wasn't angry. He was awake, and the nightmare was gone. He got up to clean the mess, shaking his head. "You are a chaotic little creature," he mumbled, but there was affection in his voice. He knew, on some level, that the shock had pulled him from a dark place. Valen reviewed these moments. He cross-referenced them with known human psychological data. The file spoke of emotional support, of therapeutic benefits of animal companionship. But seeing it was different. This was not a calculated therapy. This was a relationship. Mong Sim was not a tool for grief management or a nightmare alarm. She was a presence. Her purr was a sound that filled silence. Her chaotic act of breaking the glass was a disruption that forced Minsu back to the present. She provided a constant, low-level engagement with life. She needed to be fed. Her box needed cleaning. She wanted to play. These small tasks were routines. They were reasons to move, to care, to focus on the next simple thing. And in return, Minsu gave her a whole world. A safe world. A world where she never went hungry. Where she was never too cold or too hot. Where no larger predator could ever reach her. Where her only job was to be herself. To sleep in sunbeams, to chase toys, and sometimes to hunt. He had given her a life of peace. And she, in her own way, gave his life texture and purpose. It was a trade. But it was a trade built on thousands of years of shared history. Humans and cats had chosen each other long ago. They had seen something in each other. The humans saw a graceful hunter that kept their homes clear of vermin. The cats saw a large, warm-bodied creature that provided easy food and safe shelter. Over time, the practical reasons became wrapped in something softer. They became friends. Valen's frills glowed a soft, understanding yellow. He finally saw the full picture. The database was correct. Mong Sim was a lethal species. But that was only one note in a long, complex song. To Minsu, her lethality was a background fact, like the fact that a kitchen knife is sharp. It is a useful fact when needed, but it does not define the knife's purpose every day. Most days, the knife just sits in the drawer. Most days, Mongsim just sleeps in the sun. The bond was about all of it. The soft purr and the sharp claw. The warm comfort and the cold efficiency. Humans, Valen realized, had a vast capacity to hold these contradictions together. They could look at a tiny tiger and see only their gentle friend, while still quietly relying on the tiger's hidden nature. It was not ignorance. It was a profound, peaceful acceptance. Valen leaned back in the data stream. The story in the small apartment was more profound than any galactic statistic. It was a story of a pact, written not in words, but in shared, quiet moments. Valen had gathered his notes. He had watched one human and one cat. He felt he understood their small, quiet story. But a good researcher needed more data. He had to see if this was just a strange exception, or if it was a common pattern for humans. Was Minsu just an odd person, or was this normal? He expanded his search within the archive. He asked for other examples. Not thousands, just a few. The archive showed him 3 more cases, scattered across the planet. The first was a man named Doyen. He lived on a farm in a rural area. His companions were 2 large, white dogs. The database identified them as Maremma sheepdogs. Valen pulled their file. Ancestors, wolves. Lethality classification, high. They were powerful, built to guard and to fight. Valen watched Doyen's life. In the day, the dogs, named Bada and Gurium, were gentle and slow. They followed Doyen as he did his chores. They lay in the sun. They let farm cats climb over them. They were calm giants. But at night, everything changed. Doyen would open the farmhouse door. The 2 dogs would go outside. They did not sleep on the porch. They vanished into the darkness around the sheep pen. Valen watched through night vision sensors. The dogs' posture was different. They were alert, their ears up, constantly moving in a slow patrol pattern. They were on duty. One night, a threat came. A wild dog, skinny and desperate, approached the sheep pen. Thought it saw an easy meal. It was wrong. Bada, the larger of the 2 Maremmas, emerged from the shadows. He did not bark loudly. He made a deep, rumbling growl that Valen felt through the sensors. He stood between the wild dog and the sheep, a white wall of muscle and fur. The wild dog hesitated, then turned and ran back into the woods. The threat was over without a fight. Bada watched it leave, then returned to his silent patrol. In the morning, Doyen came out. Bada and Gurium trotted to him, tails wagging, their mouths open in happy dog smiles. They were gentle giants again. Doyen rubbed their heads. "Good boys," he said. He knew they had stood guard. He didn't need to see it. He trusted them. The lethal potential was directed, focused outward to protect the home. Inside the home, it was put away. The second case was a teenage girl named Suhyun. She lived in a city apartment. Her companion was a reptile, a ball python named Bada. Valen checked the file. Constrictor. Lethality classification, medium. It killed by coiling around prey and squeezing until breathing stopped. Suhyun's Bada spent most of its time in a glass tank with a heated rock. It was a slow, careful creature. Suhyun would take it out sometimes. She would let it coil around her arm. The skin was smooth and cool. It would flick its tongue, sensing the air. It was calm. Valen saw videos Suhyun had taken. She was talking softly to the snake, explaining its features to her friends online. "She's very shy," Suhyun said. "When she's scared, she balls up tight. That's why they're called ball pythons." She spoke about it with fascination and respect, not fear. She saw the beauty in its patterned scales, the efficiency in its simple body. She accepted its nature completely. It would never cuddle or purr. Its way of being was quiet stillness. And that, for her, was enough. The third case was an elderly woman named Hannah. Her companion was a bearded dragon lizard named Yong. Lethality classification, low, but present. An insectivore with a strong bite, Yong spent his days under a sun lamp. Hannah would hand-feed him pieces of green vegetable and sometimes a live cricket. She would talk to him about her day, about the weather, about her memories. Yong would simply sit, his throat pouch puffing in and out. He was a living piece of the desert in her warm, quiet room. He was a responsibility that got her out of bed. He was a silent listener. His wildness was in his ancient, unblinking eyes, a reminder of a world much older than her own. Valen reviewed the 3 new cases. A wolf descendant that guarded a flock. A constricting snake that was a lesson in calm. A desert lizard that was a silent companion. All were from the lethal list. All were living in a state of peace with humans. The pattern was clear. This was not an exception. This was a human trait. They did not seek to break the wildness of these creatures. They did not want robots. They wanted the real thing with all its instincts and potential intact. But they placed that wildness inside a frame of safety and care. The wolf guarded their home. The snake's power was something to respect, not to trigger. The lizard's ancient nature was a window to a different world. Humans, Valen saw, were context makers. They could create a new story for a deadly creature. In the human story, the wolf was a protector. The snake was a quiet friend. The cat was a comfort and a hunter of pests. The original, lethal nature was not gone. It was just given a new job, a new meaning. Inside the world the human had built. It was a kind of magic. A very quiet, practical magic. Valen now had enough. He needed to compile this into a report for the Archive Council. He needed to make them understand that the number 30,000 was not a mistake. It was a clue to the very heart of what humans were. They were the species that looked at the galaxy's monsters and saw, sometimes, a friend. Valen prepared his report. He gathered the observations. Minsu and Mongsim, Doyen and his dogs, Suhyun and her snake, Hannah and her lizard. He edited the quiet moments and the moments of lethal purpose. He wanted to show the full picture. The Galactic Archive Council was not one being, but many. Their consciousnesses joined in a shared data space, a silent, shimmering void of interconnected thought. Valen presented his findings there. He displayed the number first, 15,000 lethal species. Then, next to it, the human index, 30,000 domesticated companions. A wave of confusion rippled through the council consciousness. It felt like a cool, buzzing static. The data is in error, a thought voice stated. It was Counselor XYL, a being of crystalline logic. A species cannot domesticate more creatures than are classified as lethal. It is a mathematical and biological impossibility. Domestication requires docility. That is our first error, Valen responded, pushing his own thoughts into the stream. We define domestication as creating docility. Humans do not always seek docility. They seek a relationship. Please observe. He showed them Minsu's apartment. He showed Mongsim sleeping in the sunbeam. Then he showed the night of the rat. He showed the change in the cat's body, the silent hunt, the efficient result, and the quick return to purring and head scratches. The council's silence was deep. Valen felt their surprise. They willingly live with a creature that can kill? This thought came from Counselor Veen, whose species had been nearly wiped out by a predatory pest. Her fear was a sharp, sour note in the data stream. They do, Valen thought, but they do not see it as living with a killer. They see it as living with Mongsim. The killer is just one part of her, a part they respect and sometimes even need. They have a talent for holding 2 truths at once. He showed them Doyen's dogs, gentle by day, vigilant guards by night. He showed Suhyun calmly holding her python, a creature that could, in theory, harm her. He showed Hannah talking to her lizard. This is not about removing danger, Valen explained. It is about directing it, or simply accepting it as the price of a valuable friendship. The human provides a world of total safety. In return, the animal provides something the human needs. For the cat, it is pest control and comfort. For the dog, it is protection. For the girl, it is fascination with a different kind of life. For the elder, It is silent companionship. Counselor XYL's thoughts were skeptical. So it is a transaction, a biological trade. This is not remarkable. Many species have symbiotic relationships. It is the scale that is remarkable, Valen insisted. And the depth. Watch this. He showed the older memories. Minsu grieving, with the kitten purring on his chest. Minsu waking from a nightmare because the cat broke a glass. This is not a simple trade of food for service. This is emotional. The humans form bonds with these lethal creatures. They love them. They mourn them when they die. The animals, in their way, seem to bond back. They offer comfort. They offer presence. The lethal potential is wrapped inside layers of shared history and daily habit. It becomes normal. A new thought voice entered, slower and older. It was the Archivist Prime. You are saying we have miscategorized the human relationship to these species. It is not domestication as we understand it. Yes, Valen thought, focusing his conclusion. We labeled these creatures as lethal and stopped there. That is a final label. For humans, that lethality is just a starting point. It is a fact like the color of their eyes or the texture of their fur. They look past our single, frightening label and see an individual. They see a being that can be a protector, a comfort, a teacher, a friend. They see a new story. He let the images hang in the data space. The cat in the sun, the dog on patrol, the snake on an arm, the lizard under a lamp. The number 30,000 is not an error, Valen concluded. It is evidence of a unique human capacity. I propose we call it contextual symbiosis. They can take a deadly thing and place it in a context where it is not a threat but a partner, or even a family member. The council pondered this. The static of their collective thought softened into a hum of contemplation. The idea was strange, but the evidence was clear. They had seen it. And the risk? Counselor Veen asked, her fear still present. Do humans not get harmed by these companions? Sometimes, yes, Valen admitted, but they accept that risk. To them, the benefit of the bond is worth the small chance of harm. It is a calculated peace. The Archivist Prime finally spoke, his thoughts decisive. The report is accepted. The human species file must be updated. Their symbiosis capacity rating is to be set at extreme. Add a warning note for all diplomatic and cultural liaisons. The note was simple. It read, do not mistake a human's affection for weakness. Do not mistake their pets for simple animals. A human's home is a sanctuary where thousands of the galaxy's most lethal creatures have, by ancient choice, stood guard, not against the human, but for them and with them. Approach with this understanding. The council consensus faded. Valen was alone again in the data stream. He felt a strange satisfaction. He had corrected a galactic misunderstanding. But more than that, he felt he had learned something beautiful, and a little terrifying, about a small, soft species on a blue-green world. They had a power no one had ever catalogued before. The power to make friends with monsters. Back in Busan, it was a normal evening. Minsu did not know about the Galactic Archive Council. He did not know his life with Mongsim was now a teaching example for countless alien species. He did not know he was part of a report that changed how the galaxy saw humanity. He only knew he was tired. He had finished a big project for a client. His eyes were sore from looking at the screen. He pushed his chair back and stretched his arms above his head with a soft groan. Mongsim, who had been sleeping on the back of the sofa, lifted her head. She watched him. She jumped down onto the floor and stretched too, her back arching high. Then she walked over to him and wound her way between his legs, her tail curling around his ankle. Hey you, Minsu said, smiling down at her. Are you bored? He walked to the kitchen. Mongsim followed, her footsteps silent on the floor. He opened the cupboard. He took out a small blue bag of treats. He shook it. The sound was a dry, crinkly rattle. Mongsim's eyes locked onto the bag. She sat down perfectly straight, her tail wrapped around her feet. She gave a single, clear meow. This was their game. She knew the sound meant a reward, but only if she was polite. Minsu took out 3 small, fish-shaped treats. He held them in his palm and crouched down. Mong Sim approached. She did not grab. She took each treat delicately from his hand, her rough tongue tickling his skin. Crunch, crunch, crunch. She ate them, then looked up at him, licking her lips. All gone? Minsu said, showing his empty hand. Mong Sim sniffed his fingers, just to be sure. Then, satisfied, she turned and walked toward her favorite spot, a round, padded bed by the window. She circled twice and settled down, tucking her paws under her chest. Minsu made himself a simple dinner. He ate it while watching a baseball game on his screen. The sounds of the crowd and the commentator's voice filled the room. Mong Sim slept, her sides rising and falling evenly. Later, Minsu got ready for bed. He brushed his teeth. He washed his face. Mong Sim jumped onto the bathroom counter to drink a little water from the tap before he turned it off. It was another part of their routine. He turned off the lights and got into bed. The city glow came in through the curtains. It was quiet. After a few minutes, he felt the bed dip slightly. Mong Sim walked up and found her spot, right near his pillow. She curled into a circle. Her purr started, a deep, rhythmic sound in the dark. It was a sound that meant safety. It was a sound that meant home. Minsu reached out a hand and rested it on her soft fur. He felt the vibration. He closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. Soon, he was asleep in the archive. Valen watched this final, quiet scene. The report was filed. The galaxy's understanding had been updated. But he kept his connection open for a few more minutes, observing the peaceful end to an ordinary day. He saw no grand events.
No untes, no dangers, no dramas.
Just a man and a small predator, sharing a room, sharing a life. The lethal potential of Felis Catus was there, sleeping in the same bed as the human. But it was not a threat. It was a comfort. This was the heart of it. Valen understood. The galaxy saw a list of traits: claws, teeth, stealth, efficiency. Humans saw a companion for a quiet Tuesday night. They saw a reason to come home. They saw a living thing to care for. They built their bonds in the small, daily moments. The rattle of a treat bag, the shared space on a sofa, the sound of a purr in the darkness. The human ability was not about conquering wildness. It was about inviting it inside and making a place for it. It was about saying, "You are dangerous and you are welcome here. Be yourself and be my friend." Valen finally closed the observation window. The data stream around him returned to its normal flow of numbers and facts. But something had changed for him. He now looked at the cold lists of the galaxy with new eyes. He wondered what other stories he had missed by seeing only the category and not the context. He would never meet Minsu. He would never feel Mongsim's purr. But he had learned their story. And because of it, the entire galaxy now knew something new. When they looked at humans, they would not just see a species that built machines and traveled to stars. They would also see the species that could share its home with a tiny tiger and call it family. In his apartment, Minsu turned in his sleep. Mong Sim adjusted her position, still purring. The city hummed outside. The stars, unknown to them, turned overhead. All was calm. All was as it should be.